question of the Arabs is something which no party, neither left nor right, neither a Rabin nor a Begin is willing to deal with this greatest of all problems. The Arabs are not equal citizens here. An Arab who was born in Israel and is asked to get up and sing his national anthem, Hatikva, the hope of 2,000 years, he didn't sit here for 2,000 years hoping for us to return. Our dream was his nightmare. He is not an equal citizen here. What we are seeing here is a population growth which will soon, within 10 years, find at least 20 to 25 Arabs in the Knesset. And these are Arabs who hate Israel, who hate a Jewish state. And I put it that the time has come to deal with this, to come to grips with it now, lest we find ourselves before a Cyprus, Northern Ireland, or Canada.
Hello, Baruch Hashem. Welcome again to another exciting adventure in learning about Jewish history, learning about the Torah, learning about our rich and wonderful and blessed oral tradition in the Talmud, learning about geopolitics and how it impacts the Jews around the world. Baruch Hashem, there's 12.5 million of us. We have a lot to be thankful for. We really do. You know, they say, give your flowers to your loved ones while they're alive. Tell them that you love them. Tell them you appreciate them while they're here. Because when they're gone, right? And some people are remembered with great esteem more after they're passed on blessed memory than they were during the time when they were alive and doing X, Y, Z and things of that nature. Welcome to the Torah Watchman Show. The title of this Torah Watchman show is Killing Rabbi Kahane. What am I talking about here? Okay, Rabbi Kahane, Meir Kahane, was an Orthodox rabbi. He was known by many. He was quite a character. He was referred to in a lot of characteristics. I'm going to read some of these. Spiritual leader, writer, politician. Yes, he had a Knesset seat, yes, in his time, in the 1970s, 80s, in that area, in that time frame. And unfortunately, he was relegated as a terrorist. Again, Rabbi Kahane, Meir Kahane, an Orthodox American-born Jew out of Brooklyn, New York, is relegated as a terrorist. And a Kahanist, by the way, is referred to in some nefarious terms as a terrorist or someone who should not be in the political arena at all. In 2019, there was I believe a secretary who worked for Rabbi Meir Kahane when he was a Knesset member in Israel. And the Supreme Court said, if you're even indirectly related to this bad guy, this Jew here, you're not allowed to even run for political office despite the will of the people in Israel. Yeah, in 2019 that happened, and Benjamin Netanyahu was reaching out to the Orthodox Jewish community there, the Zionists there, the ultra-Orthodox there, and those people that really had a Jewish first take on Eretz Israel and where it should be in the future, right? Well, Rabbi Kahane was a futurist. He was. And some people said he was a prophet. Other people say he was a false prophet. And again, already said, even the U.S. government, the FBI, during the time of President Jimmy Carter, Clinton, he was relegated as a terrorist, and the Kahane political party as a terrorist organization, both by U.S. and Israeli government, Mossad and all of that. So let's get started since our time is short and the point I'm trying to make, okay? So born in Brooklyn in 1932, okay, you know, Borough Park. He was assassinated in 1990 by an Al-Qaeda affiliate. Yeah. So who is the terrorist here? Rabbi Kahane, because of his political stance on a Jewish first country, nation in Israel, declared independence for the Jewish people, you know, being in the land more than 2,000 years. Some people say 3,500 years. This Jew does. Or the person, the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood or Al-Qaeda affiliate who assassinated on American soil Rabbi Kahane. Okay, so that is a brief introduction. Okay, let's get started here. So Kahane was raised in a traditional Orthodox home where radical politics were common conversation. Folks, in the 1960s, a lot of things were radical, by the way. There was a very radical period in America's history that we're not all very proud of. Racial riots in Borough Park, there was a lot of violence there against the Jewish people. And that's why the Jewish people had an affinity for African Americans, that they were discriminated equally during that time. So where I'm going in here, Kahane's father was a strong advocate for militant Zionism. Now you've heard before, Black Lives Matters, Antifa, and other liberal activist organizations. Some are a domestic terrorist. It's been reviewed by our State Department, believe it or not. They refer to, first of all, as Jews as white supremacists because I'm a Caucasian, okay? Not every Jew is created equal as far as being white, being colored, having different eyes or beard or no beard or whatever. Anyway, I, in some contexts, is referred as a white supremacist because I'm a Caucasian and I'm a Jew. Because still a lot of people on this planet do not like Jews very much. But anyway, militant Zionism in itself, by a lot of Arabs consider Zion, or just say the United Nations, they consider Zionism as a form of terrorism, yeah. And they call it anti-apartheid, like South Africa. They equivocate Zionism, led by Theodore Herzl, by the way, before 1948, 1946, 1947, the founder of pretty much of Zionism as we know it. Everyone knows what Zion is. It's the old city of David, Gihon Springs, that area. They're digging up as we speak, Baruch Hashem, and the older part of Jerusalem. But so that Zion, Mount Moriah, is a Zion. So if you're a Zionist if you're a Jew and you're a Zionist for Israel, what you're saying is you are patriotic to your state. Okay? It's just like saying, I'm a Gulf War veteran and I'm a proud American citizen and I'm a patriot. Well, I'm a patriot for the United States of America. I defend all of our traditional values in this country that was raised a Judeo-Christian nation, the Founding Fathers, the U.S. Constitution, and before that, Federalist Papers, all this. I'm a proud zealot for my country, okay? So what is the difference between me as an American citizen saying I'm a proud patriot for my country, I love the American flag, I gave my life in service of my country, I went into areas in the world that was very dangerous, and I put my family sometimes as second, and supported the United States Air Force, both in reserve and Air Force National Guard and other things like that. Not germane, but what I'm saying is, if I'm a Zionist for Israel, I'm simply saying I am patriotic for that country. Now, the militaristic aspect that Rabbi Kahane was so much known for, that's where it becomes problematic, okay? I will never, ever advocate for vigilante justice. That's what's happening by the BLM in our country and Antifa. Recently, BLM members literally took a car and weaponized it to run over a police officer, okay? Our cities and Portland, Oregon and Seattle and these areas, multiple Democrat-controlled cities have been burned to the ground. Businesses have been burned to the ground through this militaristic aspect of the so-called peaceful protests, not so peaceful, BLM and Antifa. So that is a militaristic aspect, and Antifa has been reviewed recently by our Department of Homeland Security as a domestic terrorist group. Yes. So Rabbi Kahane, back to him. Yes, so how does someone become a militaristic Zionist? Well, your father raises you with a strong passion for the homeland. When I say homeland, I said Eretz Israel. And yes, Rabbi Kahane was born in America. He's an American citizen. And he also, during the Vietnam War, is one of the few people actually supported the Vietnam War and our police action and Saigon and that area. Very controversial war, but Rabbi Kahane was supporting the U.S. government's position because he understood that. Rabbi Meir Kahane was as much patriot of the United States as he was for Israel, where he got into problems and he actually went to prison about this. I'm kind of rushing up the timeline here because our time is short. He was for bomb making and things like that. A lot of that was going on in the 1946, 1947, after the Holocaust, after the end of World War II. Yes, there were American Jews that illegally sent arms shipments to Israel so that the fledgling Jewish state could survive. I don't want to get into that too much. Let's begin. Rabbi Meir Kahane actually was a yeshiva student. He was ordained to be an Orthodox rabbi. He worked as a pulpit rabbi at a small conservative congregation in Queens. Okay, he was a New Yorker. Okay, he was a New Yorker, he found work of the Orthodox-oriented Jewish press. Like I said, he was a writer. He wrote several books. I ordered one of his books. He published partisan editorials, often warning Jews of the coming Holocaust at the hands of inner-city blacks and Hispanics. You heard about the black Hebrews or whatever and those kind of things, and people that were literally struggling almost like rats in a maze for very limited real estate. For welfare and things of that nature in very close corners. That's just the way it was in America during the 1960s. It was really bad, okay? Especially for Jews. And unfortunately, there still are some Jews that don't forget about, have a problem forgetting that and forgiving and moving on, that still have a bad, prejudice against African Americans because of that. I don't want to get into that. This Jew is not that way, okay? So Kahane achieved modest fame in the New York Jewish world, okay? Some people supported him, some people didn't, okay? You consider Golda Meir, she resigned right after Yom Kippur War in 1974, whatever. Kahane was in that political arena during that time. And they both had similar political views as far as Jewish people, except Golda Meir was not too religious. Rabbi Kahane was very religious, very Torah-centered. Moving forward, Kahane got in trouble with the FBI, so-called assuming a false identity, other things like this. I'm quoting information from my Jewish learning, and after reading this in my Jewish learning, every editorial for every Jewish publication, whatever, there's a lot of them out there. I don't even go to Jerusalem Post anymore, or even Haaretz, because it's very liberal. They hate Zionism, is what I see. They're very against that. They want a Palestinian dual state in Israel. I'm not for that at all. It gives me indigestion. So there was a lot of controversial things that Kahane got into. He was impatient. He was very passionate. He was very zealous for the Jewish cause. You think about, his father probably told him stories of the Holocaust and everything else. He grew up in America when the Holocaust was in Europe, and 6 million, and it really impacted him emotionally and psychologically, and it conformed him to the man he was growing up to be. Okay, maybe he got his anger in a way. There's a lot of things in Orthodoxy in the Talmud that warns you about letting your anger get in the way. But Shed let his anger get in the way of the Jewish people, and ended up not going into the Promised Land because of that. Anger can lead to a slippery slope of many difficult things. Okay, but Kahane was largely unknown outside the Jewish world. Okay, he had some television shows, ABC, other things. I watched some of the videos. He was more known for founding the Jewish Defense League in 1968. That is actually, I believe, in Toronto, Canada. Correct me if I'm wrong. He also formed what's remains of it, I think, is in Canada. It was formed in New York City. The JDL proclaimed its commitment to protect Jews from anti-Semitism, but whatever means necessary. Whatever means necessary. Never again was his motto. Never again was something that was picked up in Holocaust. Okay, when Rabbi Kahane says never again, and you hear that going on today. Every time someone is murdered, my beloved friend, Rabbi R.A. Full, Jew American citizen, was murdered about more than 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, from this last Yom Kippur. We say never again. That never again was someone like Rabbi R.A. Full, IDF soldier, Jew American citizen, will have to be murdered again. But it happens over and over and over and over again. There is a terrorist death penalty in Israel, folks, but it went out the door in the 1970s when the last Nazi was hung. Okay, I guess it's not politically correct anymore. We demolish homes of terrorists, and we make the Palestinian Liberation Organization pay people like R. Full's family for murdering him and murdering sons and daughters in Israel and everything else. The Jordanians, for instance, leading up to 1948 and after that in 1967, have a lot of Jewish blood on their hands. A lot of Jewish blood on their hands. But moving forward here, never again meant something to Rabbi Kahane, and that's one thing I like about it, about that. Okay, he actually did something about never again. He took the law in his own hands. He broke international laws and things of that nature. I cannot commend him for doing that. He let his anger get in his way. The thing is that people just did not listen to him. Okay, even the Knesset did not listen to him. He had a very small gathering at that time of followers. Every time, like I said, he was only in Knesset for 1 year. So the JDL grew wealthy, and that they actually attracted donors and devotees because anti-Semitism was a huge thing then. It's a horrible thing right now. So between 1968 and 1971 included New York offices. There was also some ties with the Soviet Union during that time, because believe it or not, Israel became a nation in 1948, not just because of American push for that or British push for that, but Soviet influence as well. Okay, it's just what it was. So he was getting money from any source he could in order to make never again stick. Okay. So according to my Jewish learning, he was born to be wild, and there's a lot of personalities out there. They're wild people. When I say wild people, they're uncontrollable. You can't put a rein on them. Their own person. That's just their personality. There's probably no one on this planet that's not prejudiced about something. When you act violently and negatively with that prejudice, that leads to bad and potentially criminal things. By the way, it's a hate crime against the Jews, FBI punishable offense, for locking down Jews in Brooklyn and Crown Heights and other areas there, locking down the schools, arresting people in their private home. That is acting on anti-Semitism. Call it cognitive dissonance if you want to, but it is what it is. And Mayor de Blasio and the governor Cuomo of New York. Okay, so that's happening now, and this is some of the things that Rabbi Kahane was talking about. But his main focus was not just the Jews in America. His main focus was preventing another Holocaust, another Auschwitz, and that was what his main concern was. And this is real concern, because in 1948, it's known for the independence movement in Israel, but it was also the Arab conflict, the Arab war, and everything else. I mean, literally, I was reading this today. 100 soldiers with very limited ammunition, whatever, defeated 2,500 Jordanian Arabs and Syrians. It's amazing. It's like Judah Maccabee all over again. There was miracles in 1948 that God was there with Israel. It would not be here today if it wasn't for those people that were considered terrorists in Israel and considered terrorists in Europe and other places for what they were doing. It was a civil war, folks, and I have a news flash for you. When we declared independence in 1776 against Great Britain, against a monarchy there, they considered us as terrorists. George Washington, President of the United States, was considered a traitor to the state of Great Britain and considered as a terrorist as well. It's just, history is very unforgiving sometimes, right? In hindsight, it's 2020. So from outlaw to lawmaker. So this is not the first time you hear about it. Malcolm X, Nation of Islam, he was considered a terrorist too, okay? And I believe he was assassinated as well for that. I'm not advocating terrorism. I'm not advocating violence. Please don't get me wrong. I am not saying I like Rabbi Meir Kahane because he was a vigilante and encouraged other people to do these things. He was wrong. He was wrong about that. However, he warned Israel and warned the Jews across America and abroad what would happen if they did not listen to his advice. Okay? Now, he was an absolutist, and he actually, when he was a young man, actually had an Arab egress policy for Israel. Okay? He actually said on tape, and I heard this tonight, and I don't really disagree too much, because he said, if no Arab in Israel can sing Hatikva and hold a flag in their hands and say, I'm a proud citizen of this country for 2,000 years, only a Jew can say that. And he said that Arabs should not have equal citizenship and benefits right as a Jew sovereign to the land of Yehudim, sovereign to the land of Eretz Israel. That was his point, and he was considered racist for saying that. However, Arabs consider Jews as racist, and in comparison to apartheid in South Africa and all this, that's how they refer to us. So who's a racist? You have to be a race, classified as a race, a racial minority, to call someone a racist, and back and forth. That's just the way it is. A lot of hypocrisy, and I just want to point out that a little bit. Kahane decried secular Zionism. Theodore Herzl, for instance, was a secularist. Lieberman in Israel is a Soviet Jew that immigrated to Israel. He's a secularist. He does not like Orthodoxy or religious Jews whatsoever. So unfortunately, Israel was formed. Most of the founding fathers of Israel, of blessed memory, were secularists. Okay, they were not religious. They did not want to set up a Davidic kingdom in Israel. They did not talk about the Mashiach. They didn't talk about the rebuilding of the temple. They didn't talk about a Torah-centered theological government either. But Rabbi Kahane wanted that. Why? Because Hashem says it to be true, and Israel prophet said you will come back in the land in the future, and all these beautiful things will happen. Well, Rabbi Kahane went about it wrongly, but he wished the very best for the Jewish people. There's only one Jewish nation on the planet, surrounded by 52 Arabs. Okay. He says, I live in this country because it is an obligation ordered by God. Wow. Can you argue that with the Torah? Okay. Otherwise, why would I live in a country which, from my point of view, is miserable and uninteresting? This is when he moved to Israel from America. He had a dual American-Israeli citizenship. And by the way, passports during that time said Jerusalem, Jerusalem. You weren't allowed to say Jerusalem, Israel, because the Palestinians would get upset about that. President Trump recently changed that policy. Baruch Hashem for that. In 1984, Kahane was elected for one term in the Knesset, polling just more than 25,000 votes, 1.2% of those cast. There's a lot of information here. I'm trying to whiz through it a little bit. Before 1988 election, an amendment to Israel's basic laws were passed, barring any candidate whose platform, get this, incited racism. In other words, they made his political coalition illegal by saying he incited racism against who? Arabs. So Jews were being racist to Arabs, but no discussions whatsoever in Knesset about possible racism points of view by Arabs against Jews. There are Arabs in the Knesset today. They have seats, and they have a very strong minority there right now. And then Rabbi Kahane said, if you don't get control of the situation, the Arabs will overpopulate the land and drive the Jews into the Mediterranean Sea. That's what Hamas's charter says, by the way. So he was blacklisted from running in the Knesset again. And they ended up, and by 1990, he was assassinated by an Arab, an Islamic terrorist affiliated with the World Trade Center bombing, Al-Qaeda, and all of this stuff. And it took a while to define the guy that assassinated Rabbi Kahane as a real terrorist. Okay, and by the way, Rabbi Kahane's son, who followed his father's footsteps and was a little bit more radical than his father, he was assassinated too by a terrorist. So you have terrorists assassinating terrorists. Okay, but Rabbi Kahane is demonized more today by some people than Sayed Nasser, an Egyptian who assassinated him. And you know what I said before? Give your stones, give your flowers to your loved ones or whatever. We put stones on the tombstones of Jews that passed on. When we say Kaddish, and we go and visit the cemetery annually during the year around Yorkside for your family members, of what we do, we put rocks on top of there because it's more persistent than a dead flower. But what I'm saying, you give your love to the person while they're alive. There was a lot of weeping. There was a lot of gnashing of teeth. There was a lot of anger when Rabbi Kahane was assassinated. Okay, because he was assassinated for the same reasons he was warning everyone, Jews first in Israel and Jews around the world, what would happen if you did not adopt some of my political views. I'm not talking about going out and killing and massacring Arabs, okay? I'm going to read, before I get too much, I'm about to wrap this up. Rabbi Kahane said this: love has its place, as does hate. Peace has its place, as does war. Mercy has its place, and so does cruelty and revenge. That's what he said. And as I think in Proverbs or whatever, King Solomon, didn't he say that? There's a season to mourn, a season to rejoice, and all of this? Well, that comes from that. I'm going to read some more of his sayings here. He said, the poor Palestinians or Palestinians who today kill Jews with explosives and firebombs and stones are part of the same people who, when they had all the territories, before 1948, they now demand to be given all of that land back that they lost in war. They attacked the Jewish people, lost the conflict and war, and wants the land back for peace, right? And their whole drive was to destroy the Jewish state and drive them to the sea. This is what Hamas says in their charter. Look it up. You can read it. Also, he said there is no greater anti-Semite than the Jewish one. Consider Bernie Sanders, George Soros, Bernie Madoff, the Schumer in Congress. Think about that, okay? And that's true. And none hates the Jewish people more than the Jewish traitor and apostate. That's pretty tough words there. But I used to love Benjamin Netanyahu. He's a genius, a politician, but he's not a very moral, I would say, a very religious or a kippah wearing or a Shabbos candle lighting Jew. He's not a Zionist, I would say, even though in his old age, he is becoming more that way, supposedly. I'm still waiting on Judea and Samaria to be annexed, like he promised in the last election. Anyway, Kahane also said, I do not wish to see the Arabs or Jews killed in the land of Israel, but many, many will die, I fear. And if it happens, it will be not be because we have done what I call for, but rather because we will not have done it at all. Okay? Think about how many Jews have been murdered since 1990 in Israel. You can Google it and find out. Okay. Also, he said, for so long as a Jew has even one ally, he will be convinced in his smallness of mind that his salvation came from that ally. You hear about overdependence with the United States for funding and everything else for Israel's military. That's what he's talking about. It is only when he is alone against all of his own efforts and frantic attempts that he will, through no choice, be compelled to turn to Hashem. In other words, your true strength is to Hashem and not dependence on foreign agreements with other nations. That's something Benjamin Netanyahu has never believed in. Okay, that's why I'm saying his strength is not his strength in faith and belief and God and Hashem. It just is not. Every man judges his own happiness and satisfaction with life in terms of possession, of lack of possession, of those things that he considers worthwhile and viable. Love has its place. I always said that, and so does hate. Above all, it is not decency or goodness or gentleness that impresses the Middle East, but strength. Golda Meir, the Prime Minister of Israel, said there were when the Arabs teach their children love and not hate, then we can all get along and there will be peace in the Middle East. Okay, that's Arabs condition Palestinians in Gaza especially, and in areas in the PLO controlled areas in the West Bank, condition and train their children to hate Jews. It's in their school books. I can show you evidence of this and other information later on. Anyway, I'm wrapping this up. The killing of Rabbi Meir Kahane. Many things that he said that would happen has happened. And it's continuing to happen in Israel. Yet the liberal pacifist party political positions in the Knesset that's systemic, and the Supreme Court, which is essentially a bunch of tyrants, unelected tyrants there, many of them hate the Jewish people, and they would rather have an Arab terrorist in the Knesset than a Zionist Jew. Okay? No one, Tikkun Olam, no, I don't know any Jews personally, and in fact, I won't even acknowledge them if they're committing wholesale violence against others to push forth their political positions. Okay? You know, it is what it is. And Jews today Jerusalem is not even recognized by a lot of the nations on the earth. It's changing. And of course, the Golan Heights, the United States recognize that. Not many Arab countries recognize that. And much less the areas in Samaria and Judea that have been annexed over a period of years, security walls and things like that. The second Intifada mandated that kind of thing to protect Jewish families. These people are trying to live among their Arab neighbors, and not all Arabs hate Jews, okay? A lot of the secular Arabs, for instance, they're Christian Palestinians too. They're not supporting terrorist organizations against Jewish people. They're not. But there are a lot of people that are doing this. Now, what I'm saying, long story short, there's a lot we can learn about a fella through hindsight 2020 after they're long gone. And it's really a bad practice to besmirch someone's reputation, especially if they're not here anymore to stand up for themselves. Okay, I'm not a Kahanist per se, but I do understand the need for the Jewish Defense League. I do understand the need for Jews to be able to stand up for themselves and protect themselves. Fortunately, we have a president in this country, and if you're Jew, I encourage you to do some soul checking within yourself. In this election, it's historic, and it's probably the most historic election I've ever been to at 55 years of age. It's a turning point for Israel, really is. And I hope Hashem has something blessed for Donald Trump to win the re-election next Tuesday. Who knows? I'm concerned about my place here, about rioting and all of this. It is what it is, okay, folks? Listen, I'm a Zionist Jew, but I'm not advocating for every single Arab to immediately be forcibly removed from Israel. What I'm advocating is for a Jewish first policy in Eretz Israel, where Jews have well-defined Bill of Rights. We have Bill of Rights in our country. Israel's government is based on an old, archaic, British parliamentary system. There's a lot of different. There's no written constitution to protect the Jewish right. I mean, there's literally land. Jews have gone to Israel from other countries. They've bought real estate and houses and spent a lot of money investment. Put all their money in founding communities where there were no communities on land, only to be kicked off the land in 20 years, consider Amona, by some false Palestinian claim that their great-grandfather used to own the land without proof. Anyway, I could talk all night, I'm not. Listen, God bless you. Listen, fill your heart with love, not hate. There's a season for everything. Hate evil, love what is good. I guess that's what I'm going to round this up to. Shalom Aleichem. Click links to subscribe and personal notify. I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Listen, study Rabbi Meir Kahane and his contributions to Jews and during his time, the foundational things he set forth, what he said, his intent, was good and was sound and just, and a lot of it centered in the Torah. He was a religious Jew, but how he acted upon that, that's where it became problematic. Okay? So take care. God bless you.